Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and patch 10.2 launches in just 3 weeks from today. The most recent PTR build has been officially certified, which means that the next few updates will be mostly focused on tuning our classes and bug fixes, rather than adding any major gameplay overhauls or changes. However, it doesn't mean that the update isn't full of new surprises, as this week we got a massive bit of information regarding how gearing is looking to change for the patch 10.2, and we did see pretty big overhauls this week, as they're looking to add even more bonus gear into the raiding content, and adjusts tier set acquisition so that you don't fall behind if you choose to raid or PvP as a form of endgame content, as well as a new Crest Trading system that allows you to turn in your lower quality crests into much more higher quality crests to upgrade some of your best mythic gear and items. So in today's video, I wanted to cover some of the class bug fixes, even more tuning, as well as all of the newest gearing updates that get announced as of this week for the patch 10.2 PTR. But right before we get into this update video, most of you guys watching these are still not subscribed. However, the more of you remind, the more of you do, so let's keep it going. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell if you're watching these videos anyway, especially if you want to get more regular content regarding Dragonflight 10.2 or any of the future updates going forward. Vengeance Demon Hunters continue to see even more performance increases this week, with many of the specs talents gaining additional improvements. The overall power of this tanking playstyle has gone up from week to week, with various buffs to abilities such as Shear as well as Fracture, as well as resource spenders like Soul Cleave and Spirit Bomb. Fell Devastation sees 30% more damage, while passives such as Retaliation sees a 50% damage increase as well. Defensively, we also see a swap between Fell Flame Fortification and Revel in Pain, which allows even more Demon Hunters to spec into the anti-magic protection, as well as Soul Barrier's absorption, which has become 25% more potent, which could potentially make it worth talenting into during certain high-stress situations, which altogether could make the tanky Demon Hunter a much more competitive option heading into Season 3. The healing Mistweaver monks continue to get a bit more love this week, especially when it comes to their defensive bonuses, with a health threshold to proc bounce back becoming a little bit more lenient, while extending its protective benefits by a few additional seconds, which could further improve their reliability when it comes to managing personal or group-wide damage. Also, Mistweaver's range healing builds are looking to dominate going forward, so even more efforts are being made to make sure that the fist-weaving melee healing playstyles don't fall nearly as far behind. The class of Rogue isn't necessarily seeing a lot of buffs this week, but rather a plethora of bug fixes. Assassins, for instance, will be able to have a better integration between poisons like Poison Bomb as well as Caustic Spatter. For spec like Outlaw, we see even more support towards the newest capstone trait of Crackshot to make spells like Sepsis interact with it a little bit more accordingly. And the same goes for Subtlety, as they're trying to find a way to fix some of the interactions between the new and improved version of Shadowblades and how it interacts with some of their basic combat abilities. Overall, fixing every single one of these buffs is going to buff Rogue, since more of your talents can now finally interact appropriately together. Though don't be surprised if we do see some last minute Rogue nerfs to help compensate going forward, since Rogues may see significant improvements after all of these recent fixes. Lastly, I've recently found myself having a ton of fun when playing my Elemental Shaman, one of my first alts I really focused on for Dragonflight. But it seems that their tier set for patch 10.2 has proven itself to be a bit too potent, especially when it comes to the raiding environment, where the permanent Ascendance build, which was easy to maintain, may no longer be possible. But even as their fun comes to an abrupt end, I do hope that numerically the spec will retain some sort of significance going forward, at least when it comes to Mythic Plus content. Next, we have a whole new set of updates regarding how gearing is looking to change once 10.2 officially launches, starting with some of the PvE trinkets. Essentially, all raid and dungeon trinkets, even certain embellishments, are being nerfed for PvP for 10.2. This change is fantastic because it removes the need to do content outside of PvP to gain a competitive advantage, allowing players to focus on honor gear and conquest gear grinds to further improve their PvP performance, which is probably the best way to handle all form of PvP. Next, certain bosses within the newest raid of Emergrusil have loot tables with very rare items on them. Bosses are set up in such a way where they drop a guaranteed number of items that scales with your group's size. So in a mythic 20-man group, the boss is set to drop minimum of 4 items per kill. And usually, very rare items would take up one of those slots. But they also lack consistency, and the system felt like a feast or a famine situation. Sometimes guilds got lucky and got multiples of a rare item, while others got unlucky for weeks on end. In 10.2, all very rare items will now have a chance to drop as a bonus drop. This means that every boss will guarantee at least one tier set if it's available, plus 3 additional items on their normal loot table. And if a rare item were to drop, it would be as a bonus, allowing the raid to loot up to 5 items if they got lucky, which should hopefully allow for much more consistent loot distribution going forward. Another massive change coming with 10.2 is the Revival Catalyst, as it's going to become active early on into the Season 3, meaning that you can start converting some of your items into tier sets really early, allowing you to get access to your 2 set or even the 4 set bonus a little bit quicker. Additionally, it was announced that going forward, raid bosses will start to drop tier tokens with a 1-to-3 ratio, which will result in less overall tier tokens from slain bosses, depending on your group size. The purpose is to give players in the raid the ability to finish out the tier sets as quickly, if not quicker, than it was in Season 2. But more importantly, this change also allows those who don't raid but prefer PvP or Mythic Plus as the form of endgame to have a much smaller gap when it comes to lagging behind raiders, at least when it comes to comparing to Season 2, which is an overall benefit thanks to the reliability of the creation catalyst. Lastly, patch 10.2 is going to introduce Crest Trading. If you've been playing for the last season in Dragonflight, there's a good chance that you've collected all kinds of crests. Less geared players will find themselves starting out with Whelpling crests and Drake crests, which at first are quite useful. But once you get into some of the higher end content, you're mostly chasing the Worm crest and eventually the Aspect crest to help you update some of your better gear and items. But once you get to that point, all of the lower quality crests are rather useless. But what if instead of throwing them away to clear up some of the backspace, you could instead take a bunch of those Whelpling crests and trade them up to a higher quality? Patch 10.2 is going to let you do just that once you reach certain watermarks when it comes to your overall item levels. For example, reaching item level of 450 will let you trade in a bunch of lowly Whelp crests for Drake crests, further upgrading your gear and items. At 463, you can trade in a bunch of your useless Drake crests into more usable Worm crests. And once you reach item level of 476, you can trade the less than used Worm crests into your Aspect crests, which can fuel some of your best endgame gear. The new addition to the upgrade system allows you the freedom to farm any crests you wish, and eventually you can trade them up into a more usable currency to keep your gear upgrades more consistent. Also, this stops certain tiers of content from being less valuable to engage with. Doing more lower end mythic dungeons doesn't reward the best crests in the world. But let's say if you're helping your friend get a couple of weeklies out of the way and you do some of the lower level dungeons, eventually those crests that you earn from those could become something more usable to you in the long term. The trade-in system isn't going to be a 1-to-1, however. You are going to need a much larger sum of like 90 Whelpling crests, for example, in order to create 15 Drake crests. But at least it allows you to take a lower value currency and turning into something greater. And the system would allow some of the players that are just getting into the Season 3 to start out with some of the more entry-level content like dungeons and raids, and eventually progress into some of the higher end while being able to convert all of the crests that you get along the way. I want to thank all of you so much for watching this video and hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.